Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
After having looked at the effects of print within Europe, within Western Europe, today we are going to study a particular text which will show us how the effects of print show up on specific pieces of literature. How, of course, as you understand that authors have the world to refer to, and the world around them is undergoing a flux, undergoing a change, then those changes willy-nilly get reflected, get embedded, get recorded in literary work. I must warn that it is not always a conscious embedding that authors, poets, novelists, playwrights undertake, because there is a dialogic relationship between the literary work and the world out there, that some of the features of the literary world, of the real world, do also get embedded in the literary world, and similarly what is there in the literary world helps people, helps the readers frame the real world as well. So, it is a dialogic relationship. As we go along, we will understand what kind of relationship we are going to do. Today, we are going to read this poem by John Dryden, macFlecknoe, which is written in 1678 and published in 1682. I am not going to read the entire poem with you. The purpose of today's lecture is precisely to sort of point out the specific areas, the specific aspects of the text which are important as far as our understanding of this course is concerned. There are a total of about 220 lines in the poem, and we are going to just read 20 lines of the poem. From in between, we will come to the specific extract. You would do well to actually study the entire poem in the light of the discussion that we have undertaken as part of this lecture on your own, and you would find it is an extremely hilarious sort of poem if you follow all the references. Some of the references, of course, are archaic, but once you understand them, you would find it extremely amusing, this particular kind of poem. It is a satire in a fight between two poets, between John Dryden and Thomas Shadwell, and Dryden is trying to mock at Shadwell. So, the genre of this particular poem is a mock epic, or it is called a mock heroic, either of the two terms. And when you say mock epic, means it takes on the epic form, but inverts it, it inverses it in order to sort of have a satirical representation of its hero. Now, what we need to understand is, before we move into understanding the mock epic, it is important for us to understand what are the features of an epic before we understand how it is a mock epic. What are the features of an epic poem? The epic, as you understand, is an oral form, which and it derived really from oral narrative. So, it actually has embedded features of epics, as you understand. This very interestingly, this particular poem is well and truly into 1682 is when it gets printed, well and truly some 200 years into the coming of print, and with the exponential growth of print, we can understand 200 years is a lot of time, even at that point of time. So, there is quite an advancement of print, but we still find that the features that certain aspects, characteristics of the oral continue to seep into this particular era. So, what the lesson that we learn, and we have talked about this earlier as well, that emergent forms of technology continue to have remnants of the old, though the old remains primarily at a symbolic, at a derivational level, but they continue, the two forms do coexist for a long period of time sometimes, and really it comes together as a vestige. As we can see in this particular poem, the epic form really does not fit into the kind of social milieu that we are dealing with in this particular poem, but it offers a symbolic value, a value of inversion of meaning, and therefore the epic form sort of continues into this period in this particular poem as a vestigial sort of remnant of the oral universe. So, the features of an epic, as you understand that oral narratives, we have talked about this, oral narratives would primarily be collective sort of would be enjoyed collectively, would be narrated in a collective, maybe by a single poet, but there would be several nestlers seated before the poet, before the narrator, and therefore the features of the epic are organized in a way to ensure that they are able to grab the audience's attention, and also very importantly they are as we have noted in our lectures on the oral narrative, very importantly to work with structures of memory in the with which the poets could work in the absence of writing, right, because they had to remember. Memory becomes very important. So, from that aspect we have to understand the features of the epic. The features of the epic are not some kind of a rule, these are utilitarian. These features come about because the epic can only work with these features, right. So, typically in an epic there would be a larger than life hero, a larger than life hero who is someone who is bigger and better than the rest. So, some of the examples are there on your screen. Achilles in Iliad, who is a great fighter, or Ram in Ramayana. He was a superhero of a kind of a demigod, and later on worshipped as a god. Certainly, he's an avatar, so he's obviously not human, he is superhuman. So, Achilles is, however, is more secular. Achilles derives his heroism from his prowess. He has special powers, he is invincible other than his heel. So, he is a larger than life hero, capable of acts which normal human beings are not able to fathom or be able to match. And you must understand that one of the important reasons why there would be a larger than life hero is because that is what would interest the audience, to grab the audience's attention. A larger than life hero would be doing things which are extraordinary, and therefore would help keep the interest of the audience going, right. So, so through the narrative there would be instances where the larger than life hero would be performing actions which are of great interest to this audience, and very importantly the epic actually belongs not to a democratic world where everybody is equal. The epic certainly belongs to an extremely hierarchized world, where people have certain privileges by birth, their status and power in society is by birth, and their worth is by birth. So, when you say there is a larger than life hero, someone who is better than the rest, you also invariably talk about characters who are highly placed within society and within social ranks. So, within a hierarchized world, characters also have a certain hierarchy within them, and therefore, within that the epic hero is certainly much bigger than the other characters, kind of outshadow the other characters. Another feature, the epic typically has a very vast setting. It may involve people from different worlds. It could involve the gods, the humans, and demons, all of them together. All right. Typically, that is what would happen in an epic, interplay of gods and humans, and they may encompass a very large set of characters, huge number of characters. It is not a single a poem with a single hero character or two characters or a few characters, many characters, because typically an epic tries to tell the story of a community of people, it is not the story of an individual or a particular small set of people. And the timelessness, there are tremendous vast shifts in time. I mean, to understand the shifts in time, you must understand that the significance of the epic, when the story is told, it is told as if the significance of the story is timeless, is beyond time, right? The particular story may have happened at a certain point of time, though you must understand within an epic there is no sense of clock time or a calendar. So, they would not be say on such and such date this happened. The epochs, it will be timeless, right. Of course, you understand that the calendar, the clock, these are modern features. An epic is a non-modern sort of form. So, clearly the way the epic deals with time or passage of time is very different from that of other forms, other more modern forms. The other issue about timelessness also is that there would be a lot of digressions, a lot of intertextuality, and a lot of references to various other stories, whether other characters or events, which may switch across time. All right, while telling of the story, that is something that would come into a little bit more about that a little later. The epic certainly has an elevated style. The language is higher than ordinary everyday spoken language. It uses very special kind of language. What is important here is to understand that some of these features have got to do with the fact that it is an oral narrative, and therefore, that the metrical discipline is something that we have seen. The rhyme and the rhythm helps maintain memory, helps retain the stories. So, therefore, the metrical discipline is more to do with the importance of the poem, and the rhetorical devices, the epithets that are used are also a very important features. They are very glorious kind of very symbolic usages of references that are used within the epic. Intertextuality is a very important feature within the epic. Within the epic, as I said, there are constantly digressions, and this as we have understood is a feature of the oral form, where in a live audience, speakers would not come with a ready text, right. So, when I am telling a story, I can very easily break the story, go into a branch story, come back, or digress even further. So, therefore, intertextuality is a very important feature which is derived from oral narratives, and there are references to text, and it also adds to the scale of the poem, the setting that I talked about. The fact that the timelessness of the poem is added to it by referring to narratives across times, many a times contemporary references, even though the epic is talking clearly about a time that is long gone past, right? And and the digressions need not always be intertextual digressions. That means they need not refer to other available texts. They could just be giving descriptions. There could be long descriptive passages. And one thing that I had referred to when talking about oral narratives is that these descriptions are almost templated. The better poet would be one who would have more descriptive templates for specific things, and would be able to refer to those particular descriptions at the drop of the hat. Of course, in this particular poem or in modern day written epics, the writer is actually writing, which is a solipsistic operation, whereas in an oral narrative they would have to produce the description on the spot, and as I have explained, rarely are these descriptions spontaneous. In fact, in the written there could be greater degree of spontaneity than in the oral, because in the oral these descriptive passages are some kind of a bag of tricks that the poet has, and that is something that they are able to pull out at will, at whenever is necessary. And another final feature of the of the epic is the invocation. The invocation is that where the poet seeks permission or seeks the blessing of a muse, of some superhuman, some god, to be able to tell this story, because the overall understanding is that I am telling the story of gods. In my story there will be gods, and I might be able to, I am just a mere human, and I will not probably be able to tell the story very well. So it is important that you bless me so that I will be able to have enough talent in me to be able to tell the story. Certainly, another thing that the invocation does, as we had seen when we were looking at Dastan Goi, is that it gives a sense to the audience that the story is about to begin. So please settle down. All right. So it's a signal to the. In a written book, of course, you open the first page and you know, yeah, okay, after the contents page, the story is going to begin. So that's how a book prepares the audience for the story, whereas in the case of the oral narrative, it is really a kind of a verbal cue that is to be given to the audience. All right. But now let us see how the epic features are modified, are inverted in the form of a mock epic. So, if in the epic there is a hero is larger than life, in the mock epic the hero is ridiculous, but important to know that the hero, though ridiculous, is presented as larger than life. So, it is an inversion. He is the best of the worst. I mean, this is oxymoronic, but that is exactly what a mock epic is. It says that he is very, very bad. He is the greatest in badness, in negativity, right. So, that is the kind of language that is used within a mock epic. The ridiculousness is highlighted. It's an inversion, a satire on a particular chosen subject, okay, who is being mocked at, made fun is poked at this particular character. The setting of a mock epic is very, very specific. It is of course a modern setting. It is based on modern experience. I mean, very contemporary, very topical kind of context in which the story is told. So, the setting of the mock epic is extremely specific. All right, and of course, usually a mock epic is written for an audience which is very much aware of the particular issue. It is usually written, any kind of satire, even political satire or social satire, is written for the moment, is written to comment on a specific set of things, events that have happened, all right. And so, one can expect that the readers or the listeners of the mock epic would be people who would be aware of the people who would be aware of the event. So, the setting is very specific and the references would be extremely contemporary to specific events, contemporary events, which you can expect that the readers of the poem, the intended readers of the poem. Remember, no poem specifically, I mean macFlecknoe is been written for us to study it. It has been written to entertain people, to make people laugh, people who are contemporaries of the poet. So, within that purpose, the readers, intended readers of the poem, would all be aware of the references which are there, right. Now, the mock the style continues to be elevated, but in the inversion, according to the first step where the hero is ridiculous. Similarly, the style also, though it is elevated, it is a mock elevation. It adds to the ridiculousness of the hero, adds to the satire, all right. And the intertextuality highlights the ridiculous. So, the references would so since we are dealing with the ridiculous subject, and the references are if they are to other epics or epic situations, they would point out the hiatus, the difference between the two, and thereby heighten the intertextuality. Or the references could be something extremely base, extremely stupid, and that would highlight the ridiculousness. So, either by association or by inversion, the intertextuality highlights the ridiculous, all right. The digressions are satirical. They would help move away from the narrative in order to poke further fun at the subject of ridicule, the mock epic hero. The descriptions are primarily descriptions of inferior subjects. There could be scatological descriptions, as we would see in macFlecknoe, and the invocation is of a mock muse. The muse is not really a heavenly character or some kind of superhuman being, but some earthly person, some earthly being who is made the subject of the invocation, all right. So, these are the ways in which the epic features are sort of inverted in a mock epic, all right. So, by the 17th century, and we are talking about this text in the 17th century, 1678, right, when it was written, we know that in this interim period between the 14th to the 17th century, there has been a revival of classical learning, and this has led Europe to for a revival of interest in the epic form, and that is what explains the revival of interest in the epic form. The presence of the epic form is because we have moved away well into the chirographic age and into the print era. And why is the epic form important at this point? It is because of a revival in classical learning. A lot of the literature which have been translated from Greek has brought to the interest, to the attention of the Western Europeans, the epic features, all right. A few things about the historical context. We had touched upon this in the previous lecture as well. So, we know that the 17th century was a period of intense turmoil within Europe, and please refer to the previous lectures that I have tried to analyze these historical changes that are happening and how print is linked to that. I would not go into the details in this particular lecture, but just to refer to the important events. We know that there was a tussle between parliamentary politics and and the monarchy in England in the 17th century, across from the middle of the 17th century till the end. And it is difficult to say that it is a fight between the monarchy and the republicans, or the monarchy and the parliamentarians, because there were other things that were going on also. There was a fight between the Protestants and the Catholics. So you have I mean you have in England there you have the Anglican Church. The king is the head of the Anglican Church, and you have the Catholics, right? There is also a fulcrum of conflict that occurs within England at that point of time. Very interestingly, because you could have Catholic monarchs as well, but depends on what the specific specific rules and regulations, and what are the administrative steps that have been taken by the monarch, whether they are favoring the Anglicans or whether they are favoring the Catholics. So there were these various flashpoints within which the conflict, the political conflict of the 17th century England is really framed. So in 1642 you have the first civil war, and by 1649 the monarch Charles I, he is beheaded, he is removed from power, and kind of the Republican take over for the entire period up to 1660. Then there is the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, and in 1668 John Dryden, you can see his picture right there, he is appointed as the poet laureate. The poet laureate is someone who is appointed by the crown as the official poet of the land, who is supposed to it's a recognition, as well as you understand within a structure of patronage, and we talked about structures of patronage earlier. Within a structure and patronage, this falls well into the feudal mode of patronage, all right. And because we are moving into print, this is important, because we have moved into print, these structures of patronage are being shadowed by other upcoming structures of support to writers and authors, which is in the form of profit sharing and royalties, all right. And that is going to be very interesting as far as reading macFlecknoe is concerned. In 1678 macFlecknoe is written, and then you have a series of very fast changing political events. England did not see a bloody revolution exactly the way the French Revolution took place. It did have its bloody bit wars and all in the form of the Civil War in the 1650s, but and 1640s. But ultimately, when a major part of the power moves into the hands of the Parliament, the monarchy gives up power. It is called the Glorious Revolution or the Bloodless Revolution. So in 1678 and to 81, there is the attempt by the Catholics to try to assassinate Charles II, and it leads to a series of actions in which in 1681 Charles II dissolves Parliament, and then he dies in 85, and he is succeeded by James II. Important story about James II, he was a Catholic, but when he tried to inverse some of the anti-Catholic laws which are functioning within England at that point of time, the Parliament disapproved of the changes, so he could not bring in the changes. So James II again dissolves Parliament, but ultimately the various members of the Parliament, they sort of put together a plan and replaced James II with Mary and William and Mary as the rulers of England. You can read more about these events by yourself. They are important for us, for any student of English literature, but we are not going to go into great details right here. What is important for us to note here is that this is a period of extreme political turmoil, all right, and there were various people, particularly the political parties, which are divided into Whigs and the Tories, and the liberals and the conservatives. The liberals wanted more power to the parliament, whereas the conservatives were slightly more conservative. They wanted more power for the parliament, but still wanted to retain greater powers for the monarchy than the liberals. It was a difference of degree, and they were very heated, sort of very polarized kind of environment within the polity at that point of time. And you see, by 1689, Dryden is removed, just the year after the Glorious Revolution. In fact, that was the year in which Mary and Williams were anointed as rulers. William and Mary were anointed as rulers. Dryden was removed as poet laureate and replaced by Thomas Shadwell. So, while reading macFlecknoe, we may find that Shadwell is a very bad poet. That is what Dryden says. He is a ridiculous poet. He can't keep his meters correct. He writes very bad rhythm. The sound patterns of his poetry are extremely extremely ridiculous. They are pedantic. Unintelligible kind of poetry. But really speaking, I mean, Shadwell became the poet, the laureate right after Dryden. So obviously there was a certain kind of rivalry involved between the two. Okay, it is not to say that Shadwell was an inferior poet. Of course, historically we can say that we more within the canonized English literature. Dryden has a far greater presence than Thomas Shadwell, but in contemporary times, Shadwell wielded as much prestige as Dryden would have, maybe from a different camp, but he did. Right. So this was a period in which, as I said, there was a tremendous amount of tussle between the Whigs and the Tories. Over what kind of over the crown, over what kind of sort of power the monarch should hold, and what should be the relationship between monarchy and the parliament. And a large part of this debate, this tussle, were carried out in public, as I had mentioned earlier, because of the coming of print, because a large part of pamphleteering and essaying was taking place. And remember, print as a form thrives on the act of writing. So authors and writers become very important, and rarely would you find a writer or an author who is not sort of leaning either to the Whigs or to the Tories. They would have or any particular there would rarely be any writers or authors who do not take any specific position on the issue of the relationship between monarchy and parliament and even the civil war. So this was and what we see in the picture there is an example of the of the coffee house. Is an image of the coffee house, which is a public place within London. There would be London were dotted with coffee houses, which are public houses at that point of time, and people would sit around. They will and luminaries of the times would debate among themselves. They would almost be fighting with each other, mostly verbally, and these pamphlets were circulated in these large pieces of writing. Important pieces of writing would be circulated. Pieces of writing like macFlecknoe would be circulated within these kind of milieu. What is important for us to note is that within the play, within the poem, the various characters which are there, there is a reference to Richard Flecknoe. Now, Richard Flecknoe was an Irish Catholic priest, a poet and playwright, and Dryden treats him as a bad poet. Now, according to the story here, it's a kind of imaginative recreation. Richard Flecknoe is presented as a king of nonsense and dullness, and shown to be fat and physically unattractive. Important to note that Richard Flecknoe is an Irish Catholic priest. That's an important linkage. We know Catholicism was a matter of contention. Religious identities were a matter of contention, but Irishness, that is very important also to note, because Ireland is often referred to as the first colony of England. The Irish were persecuted by the English rulers. The Irish land, even today, Northern Ireland is within the grips of England. It is part of Britain. It is not independent. So, the first place which England tries to colonize was Ireland, and therefore the English looked down upon Ireland, treated the Irish as inferiors to themselves. So, therefore, an Irish figure being presented as one of the important characters within the poem is significant for us. Now, what we have, and Flecknoe is treated as the king of the realm of nonsense and dullness. This is a imaginative sort of space, and the poem begins when he at that point of time when he abdicates the throne to his greater son, that is macFlecknoe. macFlecknoe, in the Irish, if you understand Irish names, macFlecknoe means the son of Flecknoe. And who is he? He is Thomas Shadwell, right? Now, so we will look at these particular lines where he is referring to, he is describing the superior qualities of his son. Please refer to the lines, which is lines 38 to 52 is the first extract that we look at. When thou on silver Thames didst cuss thy way. Now, Thames is the river which along the banks of which London is situated. With well-timed oars before the royal barge. Well-timed oars means the oars are being pulled very timely, and this is important. Time is important to the extent that keeping time is referring to poetry, all right. Because the rhythm sort of keeps time, all right, marks the time. That is what in music also the various notations, they mark the time, that each meter marks time, all right. So, with well-timed oars before the royal barge. So, here you are, the royal barge, as you see the picture of the royal barge, which is floating, which is traveling on the Thames, and he says that the ship, the vessel that Shadwell is traveling in, that is macFlecknoe is traveling, overtakes the royal barge. His boat is far superior to mine. This is the king, the father, saying, the ridiculous Flecknoe saying, swelled with the pride of thy celestial charge, that you are sort of you are superhuman, you are proud, and the reference also is to the size, the girth, the swelling, the fact that he is big. Swelled with the pride of thy celestial charge, and big with him. So, it's almost a pejorative kind of a metaphor. He is supposed to be pregnant, big with him. People, women are big with child, and here macFlecknoe is big with him. It's a reference to his stoutness, all right. Is the commander of an host, the like was never in Epsom blanket stores. Now, this Epsom blankets is a reference to one of Shadwell's writings, his authorship, and he wrote the plays called Epsom Wells in 1673, and so these and those are specific references to specific scenes within the play itself. All right, very contemporary references. So you can expect that those who are reading this poem, or sometimes these will be read aloud in the coffee houses or any particular gathering from the manuscript, and people would have a laugh, because they would remember the particular scene from that play, if they have, or they would have heard descriptions from others if they have not seen the play at all. All right, and the lines go, methinks I see the new Aryan sail. Again, this kind of a reference to the Greek musician who jumped overboard to escape the jealousy of his fellow sailors, and was saved from drowning by dolphins, all right, who were charmed by his music. All right. So and he's saying that this is a mythological kind of a larger reference, which is calling attention to the next part of the poem, that whereas for Aryan the dolphins were affected, came to his rescue because of the quality of his music, in this particular case we see the lute still trembling underneath thy nail. He's trying to make music with the lute. All right, macFlecknoe, Shadwell, but it is bad music. At thy well sharpened thumb from shore to shore, and this poor music, very bad music, is making everybody tremble from shore to shore. And the treble squeaks for fear. That's the crests and the troughs, the sharper sounds, and the basses roar. They are not well tempered sounds. That his poetry is not very well formed. They don't sound very well. This is a negative. But look at the way it has been talked about here. It has been talked about as a very great positive. Echoes from pissing alley, Shadwell call. And these goes sound, and where does the sound of the poem come back, Shadwell's music come back from? Where does it echo? From pissing alley, not from any important lane in London, but from the dirtiest, and these are the scatological references that are beginning. All right, and as Shadwell gives a call, the echo comes back to him, and it comes back from pissing alley, because his music is fit for that particular lane, some terrible kind of music. And Shadwell, they resound from Aston Hall. The Aston Hall is also a similar kind of a reference. And what happens in Aston Hall? About thy boat little fishes throng. So for Aryan, it would have been dolphins which came across through the power of his music, enchanted by his lovely music, to save him. But for macFlecknoe, what about thy boat the little fishes throng? What are these little fishes actually? Not dolphins, but they are little fishes. But let us. But there is a comma at the end of the sentence and end of the line, and the real sort of climax comes right at the end. And you can expect that after reading that line, the listeners of the poetry sort of burst out laughing. It says, about thy boat the little fishes throng, as at the morning toast that floats along. So the morning toast, what is the morning toast? The morning toast is a reference to the human excreta, which is floating about his ship. So if Aryan's music can enchant dolphins, Shadwell's poetry can only enchant human excreta floating about on the Thames. all right. So, that is the kind of a reference that is being made. This is a kind of rivalry that is there, which is bringing about this kind of extreme satire, poking a fun at a fellow poet, but a rival poet. We will go into a second extract without much ado, and it's line 94 to 105, if any of you would like to refer to the poem itself. Now, Empress, so this is a particular a description of the scene of the coronation. Now, macFlecknoe is going to be anointed king, and this is the reference to, this is a description of that particular scene. Now, Empress Fame had published the renown of Shadwell's coronation through the town. Okay. The fame of Shadwell is through the town. Now, what kind of fame is this? This is the infamy. He is infamous, he is bad, he is terrible, everybody knows he is terrible, therefore, he is famous. Really what he is saying? He is infamous. Roused by report of fame, the nations met from near Bun Hill and distant Watling Street. This is a particular district of London which is not these are kind of framed as pejorative references, because these are districts which of London which are not those of the elite, not where the aristocrats of the society, the who's who of society reside or frequent. These are places which are run-down places belonging to the lower strata of society, all right, and that is where the coronation is organized, right. No Persian carpet spread the imperial way. As he goes up to the throne to be anointed king, there are no Persian carpets. What is it that lead the way? But scattered limbs of mangled poets lay. Shadwell is walking up to the throne where he is, where the way is decorated with the scattered limbs of mangled poets. Why scattered limbs of mangled poets? From dusty shops neglected authors come, because there are along this lane. Which is this lane? This is Grub Street. This is the print street of London. This is where the printing shops were, right? And so therefore, this is where authors get printed. So, from dusty shops neglected authors come. Why are they neglected authors who come to the dusty shops or come from the dusty shops? Because these are authors whom nobody reads. They are the poorest authors, the most nonsensical, dullest of authors, who do not find any place within aristocratic society. So, therefore, they take refuge in print. They try to make some, they do not find patronage. Dryden is the poet laureate, they do not find patronage. They therefore, in order to make a living, go to these the prints, to the print shops, that to make money. So, what Dryden is poking fun at is poking fun at the profit oriented, the commercial nature of print, writing for money, writing for profit is being looked down upon. This is commercial literature, the literature which is written for, and it is also literature which is written for the general public, for everybody, not for the who's who, not for the elite, but for the ordinary public. Mind you, Dryden's poetry is also getting printed, but what Dryden is trying to emphasize is that his primary motive for writing is not for print. He also prints, but he writes within a certain patronage structure. He writes for the who's who of the society. He does not write for the riffraff. Right? Let's look at the further descriptions. Martyrs of pies and relics of the bum. So, these are like toilet paper. the paper that is produced that on which the works of these authors are written are as good as toilet paper. Martyrs of pies and relics of the bum, much Haywood, Shirley, Ogilvy lay there. Again he is making references to contemporary writers, but loads of Shadwell almost choked away. This is what the carpeting is done by all these. So, when you say scattered limbs of mangled poets lay, that is torn out papers, these have not even sold, let alone the fact that this is the commercial printing hub of London. But even there, this poetry, even though it have been printed, have not been sold. So, they are so bad. Built stationers for humans, and look at the reference to stationers. Stationers are the ones who are engaged in the bookmaking, printing, binding, book selling. So, built stationers for human stood prepared, and Herringman was the captain of the guard, again a contemporary reference. So, the point really is that this is the kind of negative association that Dryden brings into the kind of into his ridicule of his satire against Shadwell, that the association of print with negativity, with the dullness, with poor literature. So, but we have already seen that both were poet laureates, but they were rivals with opposing political view, right. And another final point before I leave, it is important to know that though macFlecknoe was written in 1678, it was published in 1682. So, what happens during these 4 years? So, clearly macFlecknoe is not written primarily for print. It is only when it manages to gather some degree of audience that it gets printed. Point to be noted is that this poem was written primarily for circulation, manuscript circulation. It was passed around by hand. So, this was a very important facet of the times. It was not only that people were reading only printed material, no. A lot of the literature that was produced at that point of time was produced through manuscripts, and they would be copied and passed around within the circle of friends. If I like a poem, I will make a copy of it. So, many times people would write the poems in the form of letters and send it to friends. All right. So, manuscript circulation of literature was very important at this point of time. A large part of the literature was first circulated through manuscripts and then entered print. So, manuscript, but these were not, of course, the illuminated manuscripts that we are talking about. These were manuscripts which were written on white paper by poets and authors and then passed around with friends. They were not finished books, they were not bound volumes. It is for circulation among friends and acquaintances. So, this coexistence of manuscript and print circulation continued till about the 18th century. All right, we'll continue on that theme in our future lectures. Thank you.